By the time of the late 17th century, this was the dominant note in the culture of Europe. Not for the everyday guy going to work or working on his farm, but for French intellectuals like Montaigne or later on Voltaire and Rousseau. Hatred of Christianity. Voltaire used to sign his letters, in defiance of the consubstantial, that is, in defiance of Christ. They believe that maybe there is a clockmaker God in the universe, but it has nothing to do with Christianity. There's no personal salvation, and therefore there's no personal need to be moral, because they were all sexual liberationists. Now, this has been the dominant note in our culture since it was getting the upper hand in Shakespeare's day. And by the way, Shakespeare is very interesting as a writer because he's on our side, not on their side. And by the 18th century, the what you might call the left-wing revolutionaries were having everything their way, and it culminated in the French Revolution, which became the first time they actually ran a government. And from the French Revolution came all the other little revolutions, the political revolutions, the economic revolutions. Marxism is an outshoot of this. So is feminism, sexual liberation, animal rights, whatever it is. It's all come from this movement. And it has darkened the mind and darkened the soul of Western man and cut him off from everything. Most recently now, this attack we're hearing now, but the attack on the classical tradition, the attack on the humanities, on the attack on the West, this has been going on very actively for 100 years, and people just haven't noticed. But now the attackers are running the schools, they're running the colleges, they're running the people. The greatest enemies of classics are people that used to be my colleagues who are in classics departments. They're the ones declaring, well, the reason we should study classics is to know what lousy, rotten people those Greeks and Romans were, how they oppressed women, how they hated minorities. So clearly, one of the ways back to sanity is to simply repudiate this tradition. And unfortunately, if you're a homeschooling parent or you're spending a lot of money for a private school, they say, well, let's read the great books. Well, 2/3 of the great books are evil. They're written by these people. You look at the Harvard 5-foot shelf or whatever. Oh, there are a lot of very good books, but a huge number of them are written by the enemy. And what we need certainly is a cultural revolution by which we go back and draw up our own list of the great books, which is, by the way, an older list. But there are more recent writers even in our time. There are writers, there are poets, novelists, philosophers, historians. And we need to expose our children to them. Instead, what we do is we turn our children loose in school and they receive the regime propaganda. And when they come home, they want to feel liberated. They watch TV, they listen to horrible music, they go to horrible movies made by people who hate their parents. And people will ask me, well, did you see the most recent Coen Brothers movie? I say, you're joking, right? I mean, are you trying to insult me? First of all, as a grown-up, I don't have to see moronically made movies. And secondly, as a Christian who is a little bit fed up with the way the world is going, I'm not paying money to my enemy.